Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So we are in the home stretch, and thank you. I'm somewhat blown away by how many people are still here for the last session of a 2-day conference, so well done. Congratulations on your endurance. But I think this is a really important session that we're finishing with. Yesterday you heard from our Prime Minister about the government's vision for a just transition for New Zealand's future. And for myself as Minister of both Energy and Resources and Research, Science and Innovation, I am privileged to have a key role in working towards this transition. And in this session I want to give a quick overview of the broad range of initiatives underway across the Energy and Resources portfolio that are intended to drive our transition towards clean, affordable, renewable energy in the years to come, and where hydrogen fits with that. A major piece of work that we're undertaking this year is developing a renewable strategy for New Zealand. This is about the detailed strategic planning of how it is we chart our pathway to 2035 and to 2050. We're looking into the areas where government action can make the biggest differences, identifying the incentives that may be needed, the roadblocks that need to be removed, and how we can help new technologies come on stream. It's about what are the regulatory and policy settings our country needs to make the most of the opportunities around renewables. At a time when I'm hearing from business leaders that they want to invest in new generation, that the price signals are there, we want to make sure that we've got all the settings right to enable that. Green hydrogen will have a major part and role to play in this. And this session, I'm delighted to say, is about exploring this in a bit more detail. People who have heard me speak before know that I see real opportunities for New Zealand in the hydrogen space, and especially in green hydrogen. We've seen large and growing international interest in hydrogen in the last 18 months. Following the Tokyo ministerial meetings on hydrogen, it seems to be a race amongst countries to get their hydrogen strategy in place. It's important New Zealand keeps up in this space, and actually I think there are opportunities around green hydrogen where we can be a world leader given our very high rates of renewable electricity. With hydrogen, we have opportunities to create jobs, convert heavy transport away from fossil fuels, enhance our security of electricity supply, and even generate significant revenue from export. I see the role of hydrogen in the security of supply not just being about it as a fuel source and a storage system, but actually as a market enabler around the capacity we will need to combat intermittency issues in a renewables network. As a government, we are producing a green paper on a vision for a hydrogen economy that will be released for public feedback in the coming months. Many of you have already had input into workshops around this, and I thank you. But we're already making investments in hydrogen projects and trials in New Zealand. In New Plymouth and Taupo by the Provincial Growth Fund, and in Auckland by the ECA Low Emission Vehicle Contestable Fund. Several other local hydrogen projects are being developed in Southland, Otago, Taupo, Taranaki and Auckland. Hiringa Energy has secured funding through the Provincial Growth Fund investment to help develop hydrogen fuel infrastructure in Taranaki. The project will scope the engineering and design of 2 hydrogen generation facilities, up to 4 mobile compressed hydrogen storage and distribution containers, and up to 3 hydrogen refuelling stations. Construction of a pilot hydrogen production plant is planned in Taupo using renewable geothermal energy. This project will be a collaboration between the Taupo-based Tuaropaki Trust and Japanese construction company Obayashi Corporation. These projects are important, but we are turning our mind to how we create an effective system for developing a hydrogen economy. How do we build the supply chain, connect up to customers, and ultimately deliver energy to consumers that is both reliable and affordable? I expect that our panel here will start to traverse some of these issues. It's a pleasure to have three people who are so integral to hydrogen on the panel. I want to pay special tribute to Linda that you and the work of the association are doing in New Zealand. To have an association that is bringing together both the consumers and the producers of hydrogen in this country as we work through this strategic framework is immensely valuable. So thank you for the work that you are doing. And we'll hear far more about Hiringa, I'm sure too, as we go through. But it is wonderful to have Patrick here from the New Energy Coalition, an organisation looking to boost the acceleration of the energy transition. Their focus is on working together to realise this transition, so their experience in collaborating is highly relevant for us here in New Zealand. And Patrick, thank you for coming here to share insights from the Netherlands. And ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute honour to present to you for a fascinating discussion, Patrick Cnubben. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellencies, dear guests, thank you for having me, and let me first start with congratulating you with a fantastic event. Well organized, well visited, interesting discussions, and we hope we can, and I hope I can contribute to that, giving you some insights in how we do things in our region, in the Northern Netherlands. Specific region, I'll come to that later, but I would also like to thank the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, the Taranaki Venture Fund, and the new Plymouth City Council for inviting me over here. It's a great honor to be here. Thank you. Let me first give you some insights in the business case in our region. Let's see, I have to put this one. The presentation is called Green Hydrogen Economy in the Northern Netherlands. Northern Netherlands is an area in the Netherlands, of course, about a quarter of the land mass and about 1/10 of the population. So it's a very interesting region in that respect. But it's quite strange how things can go, because we are host, so to say. We live on top of a very big gas field, the largest onshore gas field in Europe. Used to be the largest onshore gas field in the world, discovered in 1956, more or less, and the production is going on since 1963. Brought a lot of wealth, about, as you can see, about 260 billion euros revenues for the Netherlands, and about 780 billion cubic meters of gas produced of a total of 2,700 cubic meters. It's a big field. But it has come as a price, because as you saw in the previous picture, it triggered earthquakes. The gas extraction triggered earthquakes to an extent that it is dangerous to live in certain places because of houses which become unstable. These earthquakes are not comparable in size to what you are used to, hopefully not anymore, but the earthquakes are between 2 and 3.5, but the soil conditions in our region are clay, so the surface rocks a lot and creates instability. Having said that, our government has decided that the gas extraction from the field will go to zero in a period up until 2030. That could be sooner. And that is a good thing regarding safety, because safety is prime. But it comes as a price because it reduces income. As you can see in the graph, it's projected. The region will suffer a 10% loss in revenues, which is dramatic. Which again is an opportunity, because a region needs a business. And we know our business. Our business is natural gas. We've been managing fast energy streams, natural gas streams, for many years. We know how to manage these streams. And we think that we have a solution if we take into account the dramatic effects of the earthquakes, the reduction of the gas extraction, and the Paris Agreement, which results in green hydrogen as a tremendous opportunity for our region. Hydrogen is a molecule, you can transport it, it's tangible like natural gas. If you can transport natural gas, you could rationalize you can transport hydrogen as well. But how to do it? We are going to tap upon the North Sea. The North Sea can be seen as a vast energy park, which we, let's say, in which we are going to harvest the wind energy through windmills. You can see in this picture, the white areas are, let's say, proposed wind farms. The red ones are operational. To the left you see Eemshaven, that's the up northern part of the Netherlands. To the east is Germany. The black lines are the corridors where the cables land on shore. So we can tap, we can harvest the wind. And the wind will come ashore in the form of electrons, and the electrons need to be transported into the backlaying countries. But that is very difficult because it will result in congestion of grids. And the solution is hydrogen, because hydrogen can be tinned. You can can the energy. You can store it. You can transport it. You can make trade, just like you do with natural gas. First, what we want to do is the energy will land substantially in the Eemshaven. Eemshaven is our energy harbor. About 30% of the Dutch power production is being generated over there. 1 coal power plant, 2 natural gas plants, 2 interconnectors which bring in, let's say, electrons from Norway and Denmark. It's a high voltage direct current connector, an interconnector, and you can see the capacity will be extended to 5,600 megawatts. It's a technical detail, will go up because the amount of wind we want to develop on the North Sea will go up to 25 gigawatts. That will take some time. But at these volumes, you need to convert to green hydrogen. That is the essence. Otherwise, you will have no market. It will be stranded. We are going to do that through our vast natural gas pipeline system. What you can see here is the natural gas system of GasUnie, our national grid operator. It owns the high pressure network from, let's say, the Netherlands up to even the northern part of Germany. It's connected even to Russia, etc. That offers a tremendous opportunity to repurpose these assets over time to transport hydrogen. Give you some more insights. It's depicted here. To the left is the natural gas network on the Netherlands scale. To the right is the high voltage network of Clennett, our national grid operator for the power sector. If you put them on top of each other, let's see, that one. If you put them on top of each other, you get a perfect example of power to gas. This is in essence what it is. There is another rationale why we would like to convert it to hydrogen, because it's far more cheaper and far more effective to transport molecules through a pipeline rather than electrons through a cable. You can put more energy in the pipeline, and it's up to between 100 and 200 times less expensive. We have the data on that. I will not, let's say, go into detail, but we have them available. It's a bit dependent on the location, but that's the thing. But if you have all these windmills offshore and you would connect all the parks individually to, let's say, to the land, it will take a lot of cables, which is a lot of money and may not be the most effective solution. Our suggestion would be to use existing natural gas platforms. They are connected to the shore via pipelines because they want to evacuate the natural gas, and repurposing these platforms, so connecting the windmills to the platform, put an electrolyzer on the platform, and evacuate the hydrogen into the grid onshore. It's very, very interesting, and I think this would be considerations you may take into consideration in your region. The holy grail of renewable energy is storage. We are in the situation that we have vast salt reservoirs under the northern part of the Netherlands, in which we store natural gas, which can be utilized to store hydrogen. In such a cavern, you can see it, about 6,000 tons of hydrogen can be stored, which is a substantial volume. But we like to think big. We could imagine that in the center of the North Sea, we could build an energy island onto which these energy parks, these wind parks are connected, and then use the island, it's to the left, to, let's say, reconvert the electrons into hydrogen and bring the hydrogen either onshore through pipelines or maybe liquefied and exported, because if you can produce a lot, you can export it. It's a business model. So our region has several opportunities. We want to step into large-scale green electricity production, windmills, solar, predominantly wind. We can import it through the existing networks. We can use our existing gas knowledge, because that is a tremendous asset. And that is also comparable to the Taranaki region. You have tremendous knowledge about gas. Use the knowledge, because if you know natural gas, it's not a big step. It's not rocket science to treat and to handle hydrogen. We will use the hydrogen in our existing chemical clusters because it's predominantly natural gas based. We need some CO2, may come from gasification, etc. And we can retrofit, we can repurpose the existing gas net to transport hydrogen instead of natural gas. So we think that we are ideally positioned for green hydrogen. But there is another region to which this is of application as well, and that is this region. Having heard things and having seen, looking around the recent days, I think the region has all the elements to make it happen over here. You've made tremendous results. Yesterday, the announcement of the National New Energy Development Institute, I think it's a tremendous step. We've done the same, so the comparisons are very, very interesting. Furthermore, if we can produce this stuff, we can use it in several sectors, the chemical industry, transport sector. So don't use diesel for long haulage trucks, use hydrogen. Works perfectly. Would suggest to visit, let's say, Los Angeles Harbor, where there are several of these trucks in operation, heavy haulage trucks, 400 horsepower. It can be done. No rocket science. We can use it for heating, because in the Netherlands, 99.8% of the houses are connected to natural gas. We can also take a step further to hydrogen there. And we can use it for electricity balancing, because that is the key to do it. We have some insights in the volumes we can produce. These are tremendous numbers, 270,000 tons, that's about 40 petajoules. I don't know how many cubic meters of hydrogen it is, but it's tremendous. And we can use it in these markets, because if you can use it, you have to have offtake. That's economy. And we think that we can do this. And I can say that we are determined as a region to realize a green hydrogen economy. And from my point of view, I think we will do everything we can to start a collaboration and a cooperation with the Taranaki region, because it's so logical. I think this location has every card in hands to play the game, to play the sustainable game. And this is what I would like to tell you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. So let's have a discussion around this. Minister, what do you see as the opportunities around hydrogen?
I think there are immense opportunities, and I outlined some of those in the 5-minute intro that I gave. I think that we have opportunities around our own security of supply as a fuel source and as a source of storage, but I also think there are potentially opportunities here for us in terms of export. as well, for us actually to find a way to make sure that there is no, I think we described it as redundancy in the wind blowing, of making sure that actually we're able to build the amount of renewable energy we need, and we can capture all the value from that at any one time. So I think it becomes part of the market we've got to put together, and the kind of jigsaw puzzle of what a 21st century renewables network looks like for New Zealand. But I think it gives us a way to export sunshine and wind, which has got to be a pretty exciting opportunity for us as well. And there are countries around the world that are actively looking for places to produce hydrogen for them in the future, like Japan. And actually, we signed the first memorandum of cooperation with Japan in the world last year, and I think that's put us in a pretty good position.
Dr. Linda Wright, what could that mean for a region like Taranaki?
Well, from my perspective, I've been involved in trying to progress the whole hydrogen proposition for New Zealand for about 4 years now. And initially that started by pulling a private sector consortium together involving 9 New Zealand entities. And I spent quite some time, about 2.5, 3 years, traveling around the world, engaging with some of the global leaders in terms of those developing the hydrogen proposition. And I could see for New Zealand that we can't do this alone. The only way we are going to progress this is with some deep international collaboration. And so the other thing that was really palpable to me when I engaged with these international parties from across the spectrum was that they're very keen to come to New Zealand because they see the value of our brand. So when I had conversations around the potential to decarbonise, for example, our iconic branded tourism route from Queenstown to Milford Sound, they're just very keen to get their infrastructure on the ground here because they see us as a global marketing opportunity. So in terms of what the value proposition is, transport is just one of them, but I'd just like to say that the focus would be on heavy vehicle fleets not competing in a light passenger vehicle context with EVs, because EVs are perfectly suited for that scenario. But to answer your question specifically about Taranaki, it's about looking at the existing infrastructure we've got here, seeing what the opportunity is for hydrogen, and connecting globally with other innovative centres that are already progressing the development of using existing infrastructure. I mean, we've obviously got an announcement from First Gas where they're just looking to pilot a project of looking at their existing gas reticulation network and putting a proportion of hydrogen into that. So that just gives you one example of an area globally that's unfolding, that we've got progressive companies here looking to deliver that kind of capacity in Taranaki.
Andrew, what are the biggest challenges around this? I mean, is infrastructure at the top of that list?
Infrastructure is certainly a major element, but we can't see it as a barrier. It's quite an enabler, and the ability to implement infrastructure in a country like New Zealand, in a region like Taranaki, but we absolutely are looking right across the country. We have got a perfect mix in this country to create, true hydrogen commercial propositions, and quite soon. So it's not something that's over the horizon. This is things that we can do within the next 2-3 years maximum, 1 to 2 years. And that's driven by the way our economy works. It's driven by the infrastructure that we have with our roading, with our agriculture industries and the hubs, the decentralisation out of just the megacity of Auckland. We've got, within the first 3 stations that we're proposing on the work we're doing, that's just a pilot of how do we get the Lego bricks to connect. And the idea is we'll have 1 station here, but the other 2 stations are to the connector regions. So what we want to be out, where do we go? Where does Taranaki go to help really show that hydrogen can be a viable proposition, to use a truck to deliver a load to Tauranga, or take some milk product down to Manawatu and fill up and then come back again, or go on to Auckland. So we've got a very good melting pot, and with very little infrastructure investment, relatively, we'll be able to create a very big opportunity to start to decarbonise. The rest of the world's also seeing that. They see that we are quite a cookbook. Not only that, so that's talked about physically where we might put the stations, but the fact that we're modelling as a company, as part of our work, we're modelling where the natural resources are. Taranaki's awesome in its wind, it's actually got potential hydro, but wind's a classic one here. But on other parts of the country, it's solar over in Tauranga. In other parts, it's hydro. So we've got pretty well everywhere where we've got some commercial potential, within reasonable distance, we can connect. So we think that is an opportunity rather than a barrier for us.
Patrick, based on what you know about the New Zealand context, how doable is this in our country?
It is, I think, very doable.
And what will it take to make that happen?
Oh, I think it takes persistence, endurance. You may need to build more, let's say, resources, wind, or let's say hydro. I think what you need to do as a country, and I don't want to be paternalistic, but I think you are on the right track. It is a small step until you can do it, and it just takes, let's say, the stamina to keep on the road you've taken. It's not far away. You have the wind potential, you have the infrastructure, you have the gas infrastructure, the power infrastructure. You have things we don't have as a country, because you have the hydro, which can give a base load component to overcome the intermittency of the wind. Sometimes it blows harder. Sometimes I don't think that occurs. There is no wind, but there may be
Very
low winds.
rare.
So that you have everything in place to make it a interesting economic development prospect.
Minister, what role does central government play in this, and what are the next steps?
Well, at the moment, we're halfway through putting out a green paper. I think it's a green paper, not a white paper, on our green hydrogen strategy. So we've been working a lot with people that have been engaged, people like Linda and Andrew and others in this room who have been thinking about hydrogen and the role that it can play in New Zealand for a while now. So we're looking to get that out for a broader public consultation very soon. But I think one of the roles that government needs to play is actually keeping a weather eye on the regulatory framework that surrounds this. That, for example, we know when we come to look at the Gas Act later this year, that one of the things we're going to have to do is run the ruler over it in terms of hydrogen and make sure that it's fit for purpose around that gas, and that we've got that right. That the health and safety framework that we've got around it is right. Of course, we're using hydrogen already in our economy, but we have to make sure that we've got those regulatory settings right. But the other role for us is that we're a government that has demonstrated over the last 2 days that we're not going to be a passive spectator on this transition. That we've invested in this new energy centre. We're putting more money into research and development in renewable energy. I want to see lots of our R&D tax incentive that came into being on 1 April, there's the infomercial. I want that being taken up by the sector, by the energy sector. I think that government absolutely has to be there supporting industries and people, helping people that have the courage to get out there and make these transitions and to walk with them. One of the things that Patrick touched on is actually the need for more generation. Now, a new generation is going to be built by private capital. But I think one of the things that has been lacking is actually that certainty of demand and what that demand growth looks like, that actually the development of hydrogen actually does give some smoothing and some certainty around that demand picture.
So, Linda, what industries could benefit from hydrogen?
Right, so could I just have a fortnight to talk about this?
Yeah.
I think, there's sort of several aspects to the whole progression here, and one of those which is pleasing to see is that industry, we've already got hydrogen capability here. It's not overly well known, but there's various entities, Refining New Zealand, Methanex, BOC, they all generate hydrogen. And so we have some existing capability and an understanding of how to manage effectively and safely hydrogen. And it's great to see that some of those entities are already looking to decarbonise that hydrogen. So they're looking to put projects in place. So there, several industries already pursuing that proposition around green hydrogen. So there are others, a whole range of entities. The association now is at 33 members. It was formally launched in September. It's grown that rapidly. So there's an appetite for all kinds of industry sectors to participate in what the hydrogen proposition is. And so first and foremost, we need to engage with a whole range of entities across various sectors to look at their operations and where they use fossil fuels and how they would decarbonise and what the opportunity for hydrogen is. And that's probably a big area of work that I need to be engaged with the private sector, is to look at their operations and the opportunity for hydrogen. So I don't think it's industry specific,
Right.
It's across the board.
Andrew, what about the role for workers in this transition? What would you like to say on that?
I think it's actually, it's very exciting, and look, one of the reasons we started our company here in Taranaki is for the exact reasons we've just heard. We've got the skill sets here,
That's
we've
right.
got the industry here, we've got the partners here, and I'd like to touch a bit more on about the models that we're sort of pursuing in terms of as an entrepreneurial company. But going to the workforce. Now the workforce, we're blessed with the skills that the oil and gas industries develop with in terms of your engineering, your fabrication, your operations, and that's brilliant. That's a key part of this stuff. This is a molecule, as Patrick pointed out, and we need to manage it and the safety skills that we have. So the place to develop that infrastructure capability to roll out infrastructure, it's an obvious place for us to base ourselves and grow partnerships with the fabricating companies and with the engineering companies, etc. But it goes so much more beyond that. And just picking up on from Kate's talk this morning, hydrogen is an ecosystem. We're having to create an ecosystem here. It's not this conventional find something in the ground and deliver it to a market. You're actually, and the very fact that it's a hard question to answer, which industrial sectors will hydrogen touch? It's an ecosystem that will touch almost all in some way. And so in order to create that, we need to think differently. How do you unlock this? And you'll hear about the cost challenges and so on as well. So we need to think smart. So the skills beyond the engineering, fabrication, operations skills, the traditional energy skills, are the other energy skills. It's commercialisation, analysts. It's stakeholder engagement. It's true collaboration. Communicators. We need communicators. So it's about those skills that we need to be able to take and to be able to articulate it's not the normal model. So picking up on our model as an entrepreneur, we're partnering. We are actively partnering in joint ventures right the way across this ecosystem. And it's through that partnership that you align. So certainly the partnership that we have for an industrial project which we're working up currently with a partner, stay tuned, that's looking to create green hydrogen to make green industrial chemicals, is a different partnership from our trucking partnership with TIL, Freight. But they're both very important partnerships, and we will find the commercial constructs to help unlock this. So it's about, the other partners in this is government. The other partners in this are going to be iwi. How can we unlock? These are wonderful distributed energy opportunities to unlock energy for iwi. The community. Now we're going to have more renewable energy. We are going, it comes at a price when we take the gas away, or in fact it's just the dwindling resource in many areas. We are going to need renewable energy. So we need to work with communities to have engagement, have some ownership, have some skin in the game with us on this journey. And it's not just turning up when we're ready to go build, it's the conversations that we're needing to start now.
I've got plenty more questions, but I want to make sure that in this last 15 minutes we have time for questions from the floor. So I'm just going to go straight to that. And if you could keep your answers as short as possible, that would be great. This question's for anybody. Is there a place for blue hydrogen in New Zealand if it can be manufactured in a way that's emissions free? And whoever picks up on that, you might like to define blue hydrogen for people that don't know.
Blue hydrogen is defined where we capture the CO2 produced during the production of hydrogen, and that gets captured and stored typically. It can be carbon capture use, which is also a good form of blue hydrogen, or it's sequestered into the ground. So it's a method to be able to get high volumes of potentially low cost hydrogen. I guess from our point of view, Hiringa as a company is mainly pursuing, is pursuing green hydrogen, and that's got to do with, if you like, the practicality of resource. It's got to do with what do we have. If I look at it through a pragmatic eyes, what do I have lots of? we have lots of wind potential, we have lots of renewable energy potential, but we don't have as much gas, and we've got some very important industries out there that need that gas. So as we open up more markets for hydrogen, if I'm starting to take that hydrogen from an existing gas market, then I'm going to start to affect that gas market. And that's going to make it harder for me to buy the hydrogen. So you can start to see there's an imbalance. So that's, as a company, that's the position we've taken, and therefore pursuing green.
And the strategy that we're doing as a government is very much centred on the opportunities around green hydrogen. There could well be people that want to look at blue hydrogen opportunities, but that needs to be considered within the context of what the supply of the feedstock looks like in New Zealand.
And just to be absolutely clear for people, your definition of green hydrogen is?
Produced electrolyzers produced from renewable forms of energy.
Or biogas.
Or biogas. But so what we're saying is that we are very open around what our policies are around new exploration of oil and gas. It's sparked this wonderful conversation we've had over the last 2 days. People will make commercial decisions with full knowledge of that market, but where we're putting our energy as a government and putting the emphasis in the strategy is on the opportunities around green hydrogen. As Andrew says, we look to where we're going to have an abundance of resource to make it, and that's in our renewables sector.
Can I just add?
Yes,
thanks.
go for it.
I spend a lot of my time engaged globally with entities that are progressing green hydrogen, or just hydrogen per se. But in terms of the Global Hydrogen Council, who are collaborating with the World Economic Forum, they're very focused on working towards a green hydrogen economy. And so I'm fortunate enough to have middle of the night teleconference calls with the steering group of the Global Hydrogen Council. And the New Zealand Hydrogen Association has been accepted as to one of 6 global associations, and by being part of that role, that enables our ministers to be invited to global discussions around the opportunity for green hydrogen. And so without doubt, that's the progress that's being made globally.
Patrick, I'll put this one to you. This question, can we discuss safety? How safe is it?
Well, hydrogen is, I think it's very safe. It is used in industry every day, all over the world. So from that perspective, it is safe, but you have to explain to people what it is, how to deal with it. Everybody knows that you shouldn't smoke a cigarette. You shouldn't smoke at all, but you shouldn't smoke a cigarette at a gas fueling station. These are the simple things you need to explain to people. It's logical, and for instance, in the Netherlands, 8 billion cubic meters of hydrogen are used every year. In Germany, 12 billion cubic meters of hydrogen are used every year, every day. It's safe.
Minister, there's a question here. What changes are proposed to the RMA to ensure that consents for hydrogen-related activities don't take years to get through the Environment Court?
Well, actually, this is part of a broader piece of work, actually, that David Parker and I are looking at around renewables more generally, so part of the renewables strategy, that actually I think we need to build a new social licence in New Zealand for renewable energy projects, and we need to have a conversation around what that looks like in terms of the desirability of us having more wind generated, more wind turbines generating energy, that we need to think about what are the social licence and consensus that operate around solar farms and what we can do around those. So we haven't specifically said this is what we're going to do in terms of hydrogen, but in terms of the work we're doing about renewables generally in the context of the renewables strategy, and certainly coming out of the hydrogen green paper, we are aware that some of those regulatory matters around how it is that we consent are things that we're giving attention to. So that's a piece of work that we've started.
Alison asks, can you use seawater to create hydrogen, or does it have to be desalinated first?
At the moment, you need to desalinate. But there's some very interesting research going on that is looking to directly produce from seawater. There's some in Australia, there's a lot over in the US, research going that way. So it's, watch this space, it's exciting.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes, go for it.
I recently launched the association website, and it's Hydrogen New Zealand, and what I've tried to do with that is show an irrefutable body of work that demonstrates the progress internationally. So It's to show the whole breadth of work around strategic development, the R&D, the innovation, the collaboration with major corporations in terms of their investment and working together. And so that's a resource for us here in New Zealand to use to sort of upskill and gain our knowledge across the whole cross-section of the hydrogen value chain.
Linda, there's another question here. With the change of oil and gas to hydrogen as an emerging opportunity, as a new fuel for New Zealand, what is being planned? Well, this is a slightly different, this will probably go to the Minister. What is being planned for those who already work in the oil and gas industry to move them into the new opportunity? I'll ask the Minister that, but what do you think? How do we actually transition people well towards this new future?
I think from the work that I do from a domestic context, I think it's imperative that we have engagement across the board so we understand the proposition so that we can, from a private sector perspective, we can scope projects, we understand what they are, and therefore we can elevate them to board levels to make investment decisions. We need some clear direction in terms of investment criteria from the government around, what projects will be scoped. Even though there's some in progress, that's definitely a clear message that I get back from the private sector. It's about engagement, fundamentally, from my perspective. There's also the export proposition, and I'm very conscious that we need to have a cohesive view around how we're going to participate in earnest in terms of the undoubted export opportunity that is waiting there for us to participate in. And I don't believe we're quite there yet, and so we need parties to come together and have a clear vision of how we're going to capitalise on that.
Just while we're on that point, I'll put this one to the Minister. What is the target percentage of hydrogen production for export and domestic use to be commercially effective?
Look, that stuff we're working through, and obviously the strategy, the hydrogen green paper, we're working through that in terms of proportionalities. But I want to go back to, I think, what was a really important question around the reskilling of the workforce. And one of the things, I think there's some very practical things and next steps that we can do. And certainly talking to Patrick, I think for me, one of the most exciting things, there's many exciting things happening with what you're doing, but one of them is an energy college that coexists as part of this precinct. And it's about the vocational training that sits alongside the development of the technology and rolling that out and commercialising it, making sure that you've got the workforce with the skills to take advantage. And that's exactly what we're talking about when we talk about a just transition. I think that it's a fantastic thing in the last session to be able to point to a very practical example like that. It's certainly something that we want to think about, how we match regional skills needs with the kind of centres of excellence that happen in areas, and something that I'm keen for us to perhaps progress beyond this is perhaps the next thing we think about. What is the particular vocational training? And Patrick's offered to share some of what's happening in the Netherlands around that with us about how we can do that very practical match. But I want to go back to the point that I often make. For most people working in the industry, they'll finish their careers in the oil and gas industry. But it's about the kids leaving school and them going into training. What are they training for? And we want to make sure that's about realising all the opportunities that exist out there.
Any of you can pick up on this one from Simon. Is there a place for the private sector to invest in standalone green hydrogen facilities?
Absolutely.
Yes.
How do we bring that about?
I'm stealing the show. Hand it over.
Well, I would argue not standalone. In other words, bring it into an ecosystem. So, yes, there's absolutely going to be business cases, and they're very close to do some large-scale. Scale brings opportunity. But we're certainly planning on some. But at the same time, we need to make sure that it's part of it fits into the broader picture of what we're trying to achieve and make sure we can supply the transport, we can supply the industrial feedstock. I guess one thing on the skills I'd like to add. I mean, we've got 10 people in our company, and when we were a twinkle into it in three of our eyes a couple of years ago. So already, and some of those people are from oil and gas that are in our company, and some are from other sectors, some are from renewable. So we're bringing together and creating and doing some reskilling, and now the skills in that company already are quite a unique skill set. So there'll be many others that will go through that process. And it's brilliant that we've got the skills here to draw from.
Can I just add?
Yes, go for it.
I keep chipping in. So coming back to that small scale small scale, you can't take me anywhere, small scale scenario is there is opportunity, particularly, I've done some feasibility work for a tourism company that have got a remote off-grid location, and they've got some hydro, and it's about the value proposition of you know, being able to showcase to a tourism operation that you've got some hydro, developing some green hydrogen that you then utilise within that operation.
So it's an added value.
It's an added value, and so there is small-scale proposition involving, you know, green hydrogen as part of that tourism offering. So my answer to that would be yes. Scale is imperative to get the right cost balance. Oh, and I'm not talking scale, big size, I'm just relative to investment.
Minister, I know that you're doing the strategy around this. There's a few questions around exporting. One person, Phil, says, Megan Woods, let's make New Zealand green hydrogen a clean export fuel to the world. Can we do it? And Tim says, you support... oh, sorry, I'll ask that one next. Someone else says, if we export hydrogen, will New Zealand benefit from royalties from this energy export exactly as it would from oil and gas? Is exporting part of this picture?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, people often say, why would we start exporting it before we decarbonise our own economy? And I don't see it as an either or. I think that they can coexist. And as I've said in some of the other answers, that actually part of actually getting the economics of hydrogen right is actually having a way to use the overcapacity. So you can use it domestically or you can export it. So I think that we can do both in tandem. In terms of how it is that we'd monetise that, it will be a product that is exported and that it will be sold and there will be revenues raised from it. But one of the things, I'm just going to say, you can't take me anywhere either, but one of the things about the standalone, one of the things recently in Germany, the hydrogen train that's being trialled in the north of Germany, the vision is eventually to get to there because the cost of electrolyzers is plummeting, the cost curves is plummeting so quickly that some people were saying by next year or the year after it will be equalised with traditional hydrogen production, that you'll be able to have standalone wind turbines with an electrolyser to create the hydrogen for the refuelling station, because you get a 1,000-kilometre range on these trains. It's not like you've got to have a petrol pump every 200 k's, that you can have quite a sparse network of this that is decentralised. And I think that's one of the things and themes that have come through over the last 2 days, that we are talking about a decentralised future.
I just want to wrap up by asking each of you, what do you think the key opportunity is for New Zealand with hydrogen, starting with you, Linda?
I think that it's going to play an integrated role as part of our future energy mix, and it presents distinct opportunity both from a domestic context. It's not the golden panacea, it will be part of our integrated range of solutions, and I think it's imperative that we pursue that export potential.
Andrew?
I think there's some really cool new, as a business person, really cool new business models out there to work together and create the sort of future that we want for our children and for our children's children. And as we heard earlier yesterday, that's not just say that and walk out, let's go do it, and we need to start to do that now.
I see it as an important part of the mix that we need to decarbonise our economy.
Actually, all the things the previous
What they
speakers told. Yeah. And make it an integral part of your energy system. That's what you need to do. And there is one other thing. If you can't share, you can't multiply. It is a game of collaboration. And that will help you tremendously. And you have all the cards in hand.
A fascinating conversation on hydrogen. Many of these questions that haven't been answered will be picked up by MB, and those responses will be put on the Just Transition website after the conference. Just before we move to our closing of the conference, there are three particular questions which have cropped up in the Slido feed, which the team is really keen for us to put to the Minister. These don't relate to hydrogen, they're broader than that. One of those questions, Minister, is that the just transition is to lower emissions. Natural gas has half the emissions of coal and could even be lower with CCS technology. Do lower emission fuels like natural gas have a role?
They have a role in the transition, and I think that's the important point. And what I made what I said in my comments yesterday is that a transition is just that. It is not the maintenance of the status quo forever. It's actually about embarking on a journey of change. But we have charted out, and for some people this pathway is too fast, and for other people it's too slow. For others it's just right. But what we have charted out is a pathway to 100% renewable electricity to 2035 in a normal hydrological year. Now, for most people in the room, they understand exactly what that means. That understands there is going to be some peaking through to 2035, and some of that will be peaking from gas. So yes, it has a role to play in the transition, but we have to understand it genuinely as a transition.
The second question is, what is the government's preferred transition fuel if not gas?
My preferred transition fuel is renewable energy. That we see the role for gas. What we're seeing is the medium term gives us every reason to believe that it will be there as the transition fuel in the pathways that we've charted out. So that certainly is the transition pathway we're on.
And finally, we've talked a lot about the difference that these decisions can make for our country and our people. Can New Zealand really make a difference on the world stage?
New Zealand can always make a difference, and none of us should ever stop believing that. That what we see is that actually the collection of small countries and their emissions actually sum together to be one of the largest emitters in the world. Every country has to take responsibility for its emissions. Every person has to take responsibility for their emissions. That is the only way that we will tackle climate change, and I refuse to believe that New Zealand will not make a difference. And what we've heard over the course of the last 2 days is actually the leadership that New Zealand's showing, and what is happening in this room, in this region, how important that is for writing the textbook for how it is that we have to roll out transitions around the world.
A round of applause for our panellists. Thanks very much for joining us.